pull them out of there. The jets have gone offline, and hey, looks like the ground team have actioned the evac. Pilot, coordinate the pickup. Demolitions, do what you can do. We're almost there, people. The local PD are all over this. Communicate. Choose somewhere with enough space to land and pull them out.
It might not burn. It could be theirs. Groundbreaking research from Dr. Alan Brown yielded direct link between chronic parasitic infection and neurological diseases like multiple sclerosis. Parasites
Pilot, ground team, you need to coordinate and get Rashkovsky airborne ASAP.
Whole body at least once a week. Well, it's not a solution for you. Ivermectin plus prevention. The gold standard parasite solution is now combined in one blend compound designed to eliminate harmful invaders and support their immune system naturally. Medical grade, not some trendy herbal gimmicks. Fill out a quick intake form to get 2 months supply shipped straight to your door. Make America Healthy Again is officially here, and the wellness company is making it hard to get medication digitally accessible so you can live your best life. Head to CWC.health/Canvas and use code Canvas to save $90 off plus free shipping. Fund your money today at CWC.health/Canvas and use code Canvas. So, now that we've talked about sharecropping on the fields, let's talk about the slaves that still work the plantation. A lot of people don't know that the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery in the United States, didn't actually abolish slavery. It's just the one very simple condition of the practice. In the very first line, it says, quote, neither slavery nor the abolition of slavery, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall be convicted, held this within the United States or any place of the And so, it was predicted that some prisons and are still
Okay, get the plane out of there. Demolitions, keep with them. When the rest of the crew bails, you'll be picking them up. You need to evade the authorities before you bail out of there. Run evasive maneuvers, get clear, then head toward the drop zone. If this all goes to plan, you rendezvous on the beach in the Palomino Islands. And remember, Rashkovsky's paying you to get him out. I'm just a friendly stranger you know very little about.
I don't like extremely hard penalties for practical being used.
3 strikes, you're outlaw.
Now, these practical being were 100 times stricter than for regular being. So the minimum sentencing was 5 years for 5 grams of crack, or 5 years for 500 grams of powder cocaine. You might notice in this snippet from the New York Times that it said this was an amendment that actually for minimum sentencing. Joe Biden is in that bill too. In fact, all throughout the 70s and 80s, Joe Biden was at the front of the charge to expand the power of prisons. And he authored numerous acts to win prison.
And y'all niggas voted for that man.
I probably don't need to remind you that without the CIA, that is flooding more black neighborhoods.
Thank
And so, from 1973, expanding until 2009 when this regime, the imprisonment rate in America increased steadily. We went from just a couple 100,000 people in prison to over 1.5 million. Except, by some data sets, it's over 2 million and has been since 2005, depending on who you trust. When you look up official Department of Justice fact sheets, though, they conveniently show the data going back just to 2009 when prison population was peaked. So the close in this graph, white prison populations are increasing. What a convenient way to present it. You see, they just show this last little decrease at the end there that I just made. Pay no attention to Joe Biden's legacy. The Sentencing Project reports that 1 in 5 black men born in 2001 is likely to be in prison at some point in their life. Black Americans account for nearly 7 out of 10 people in American prisons. Biden actually went out of his way as a Democrat senator to reach across the aisle and ally with segregation.
I should say, I've been impressed by your professionalism. I'm not going to go into it, but Rashkovsky's part of something bigger, way bigger. I need to make a few more inquiries and be ready to go on a job that requires your particular skill set. Don't retire on me just yet.
Every final crime bill has had the name of the Democratic senator from the state of Delaware, Joe Biden. And so now, for every 100,000 black adults in America, 1,196 are in prison. The rate for white people is 200. political publications do because they say Black X, a term that no Latino person has ever used. Literally, their entire language is gendered, but full sidetrack. Also worth noting that almost half of federal prison inmates are there because of drug charges. A fact they have the war on drugs and Joe Biden's crime bills to thank for. Only 21% are in prison for weapons-related charges and just 7.3% for violent crimes. Now, this problem is incredibly complex and multifaceted, and all too often, people don't want to account for all of these different factors that are contributing. The justice system has been designed to target and more severely punish black people. Also, black culture has been infested by music, celebrity, and gang culture that glamorizes criminality. Poverty has seen in black parts of America, making it all too easy to slip through the cracks. And none of these truths should serve as any excuse. More than one thing can be true at once. Just because you're black doesn't mean you're bound for life of criminality with no way out. But if you're born into a class and culture where criminality is the norm, and even seen as cool and high status, and you see it all around you, well, it's a vicious cycle. And regardless of the color of your skin, once you're in, the 13th Amendment's abolishment of slavery is out the window, and you join a vast hidden workforce that enriches all of America's most beloved megacorporations. From Frosted Flakes cereal and ballpark hot dogs to gold medal flour, Coca-Cola, and Riceland rice, prison labor products are on the shelves of virtually every supermarket in the country, including Kroger, Target, Aldi, and Whole Foods. We even export some of these products to countries that we have previously blocked imports from in protest of those other countries' poor labor practices, which to me is peak American hypocrisy. Some prisoners work on the exact same plantation soil where slaves harvested cotton, tobacco, and sugarcane more than 150 years ago. And slaves are still picking cotton today. Willie Ingram, who was featured in this expose by the Associated Press, picked everything from cotton to okra during his 51-year stay in Louisiana State Penitentiary, known as Angola, which is built directly on top of the gold plantation. Quote, "They come maybe 4 in the truck, shields over their face, billy clubs, and they beat you right there in the field. They beat you, handcuff you, and beat you again." Angola sits on a massive plot of farmland, previously owned by one of the largest slave traders in the U.S. Today, it houses about 3,800 men who head to the field within days of arrival. At first, they work for free, but then they can earn between 2 cents and 40 cents an hour. And across the country, work is done for most of our biggest brands, whether it's manufacturing products specifically for that company or producing raw ingredients that are then sold into the supply chain. This is just a small list that the AP was able to directly observe in their investigations. And they do it because it's incredibly profitable. These workers don't have benefits or protections or typical safety standards. They hardly get paid and so can produce goods for much cheaper than a normal worker. And then these products and goods are sold on the open market where they compete on price with regular farmers and manufacturers, further pushing on family farms up prices. Prisoners also often work in industries with severe labor shortage, and so they wind up doing some of the dirtiest and most dangerous jobs in America for basically no pay. Altogether, the modern slave labor industry brought in more than $2 billion in revenue. And that's just the prison labor, not to mention work release and other programs. Curtis Davis, who spent more than 25 years in a penitentiary, said, "Slavery has not been abolished. It is still operating in present tense. Nothing has changed." And next, we're going to talk about how they're trying to bring slavery to the middle class. But first, let's take a break. Real quick, guys, I'll tell you about America. We're all in it. Inflation is eating away at gas, groceries, home repairs, and if you're a homeowner, you probably thought, should I call American Financing for new finance and pay off the credit card debt? But then you second guess yourself because that low mortgage rate is burning. Listen, that low rate is not safe if you're drowning in credit card interest and that's the math we're going to do. It's costing you now. So here's the truth. If you're only making these payments, that debt will follow you for years. That's why people are calling American Financing because they're saving customers an average of $800 by using their equity to finally break free from a credit card debt. You owe it to your family to steal. No from fees, no pressure. It costs you nothing to find out what you can save every month. And if you start today, you may be able to delay 2 more. Call American Financing today, 800-795-1210. That's 800-795-1210 or AmericanFinancing.net/phones. So, the poorest and most rock bottom are being farmed out as prison labor on literal plantations. People on the verge of falling through the cracks or just crawling out of them are preyed on by the trucking industry among many other exploitive fields. Average Americans are locked into dead-end jobs that used to be enough to buy a house, a car, send your kids to college on. Now those same jobs have Americans on food stamps and taking out debt for just basic purchases. So how do you break free of this rat race? How do you chase the American dream out of the rat race and change your fortune? You start a business, right? Wrong. Because, oh boy, is the franchise industry up to the same games. And listen, we are about to skim the surface of an incredibly complex game, and I've done my best to keep it from getting too dry and keep it interesting the way that I try to do. Because it's not always the flashiest, most Twitter viral news stories that is going to be the most important to actually know about. Many of the most important things happening in our world are bound up in complex legal filings and drawn out across years and years of, frankly, boring processes. And this one, it matters. It matters in so many more ways that I'm going to be able to fit into this segment. But this is a start. Because you see, if you're the type of upstanding citizen with good credit and some amount of savings and income that you could consider applying for the loans required to open a business, you are an even more valuable cash cow to be milked. And the franchising industry, which has for generations been the most accessible way for regular people to become business owners and achieve the American dream, it has found a way to extract every penny that dream is worth. Many people think of their net worth as
Guest services. Can I help you, sir?
how much money.
I'll send one of our best drivers right away.
You're worth so much more than that, even in a strictly financial way. That's because we have credit. You have credit. And it's important before we go down this rabbit hole to unpack credit a little, because credit is not just a plastic card that you keep in your wallet. Credit is your future. It's a promise to pay it back later. And it's a promise to exchange your future time and your future work for something right now. And give yourself some credit. You could probably be worth so much more down the line than you were worth today. And that precise monetary fact is what private equity and mega corporations have learned to prey on in the franchising industry, which has started a whole predatory practice of contracting people into new businesses.
Hey, how can I help?
All the credit they can take
Sure thing. Limo en route.
bill to pay for the rest of their lives. It all starts with the discovery process and a contract. Suppose that you wanted to start a business or do something meaningful, something to change your family's fortune and provide a better life for your kids. And you hear about this great new idea. A martial arts studio franchise and a burger franchise are advertising a new business model in your town. They're looking for someone to open a new franchise location in your town, and the business is basically turnkey, ready to go. Your partners doesn't need to spend any time working on it because their proven business model is actually so dialed in that you just open up shop, hire some workers, and the business runs itself. Pure passive income. You just work a few hours a week on the side. You can even keep your day job if you want. It sounds too good to be true, but you decide to schedule a meeting with them just to hear them out. Maybe this is actually your family's lucky break. When you sit down with them, they show you all kinds of potential. It's actually true. These franchises are opening up all over the country, lightning fast, and they're profitable almost right away. The burger place comes with crazy celebrity endorsements, and the martial arts studio runs completely hands off. It's awesome. They have all the equipment you're going to need already sorted out. All the branding and advertising, all sorted out. All you need to do is secure the financing to open up shop, and your life will change forever. You think it over with your family. It's a pretty big risk, but you know that you're hardworking and you always will. The document you took home with you is extensive. It's several hundred pages long, and it details everything about how to open and run the store, as well as all the legals. But, really, it's actually mostly all legal stuff, but it also has all the data about how many other successful businesses that franchise has opened across the country lately. So, you decide to do it. In your next meeting, you You sign on the line and you officially join the brand family. Next, you're off to the bank to secure a loan in order to open up your new business. And I'm sure that you see where this is going. Sometimes this process does work great. If you're working with an honest company, this really can be the path to a new life. But all too often, that document that you're holding is actually filled with deception, half-truth, and outright fraud. The Federal Trade Commission sued a franchise called Burger Inn, the burger joint that I described just a moment ago in our intro, for fraud. They were selling their franchisees a pipe dream that had nothing to back it up, even though they had information in that document, causing these people to take out huge amounts of debt only to have nothing actually materialize. The Franchise Times reported that they sold at least 1,550 franchises and collected at least $57.7 million in just initial franchise fees from 2015 to 2019. But they had only opened 130 out of 1,550 locations by 2018. To make it even worse, they were advertising to veterans and then extracting all of their credit, all their future time and earning potential, only to leave these veterans broke and destitute on empty premises. Burger Inn was pitching this as a business in just the way that I described earlier, a business in a box. And the company was targeting veterans with discount programs to lure them into the business. It sounds kind of insane and even unbelievable, but actually it's a lot more common of an occurrence than you might realize. In 2023, Lena Khan, the chair of the Federal Trade Commission, which is the government body that oversees all this stuff, she posted a request for comment from franchisees so business owners could share their concerns and grievances about the industry at large. Her inbox was flooded with comments from franchise owners who had experienced these same predatory practices and lost everything. She later published a document summarizing the findings of her investigation, and it had paragraphs like this in it. Quote, several franchisees discussed misrepresentations franchisors made during the sales process, startup costs, and sales revenue, and profit data were some of the critical areas where reported receiving information they believed was false or misleading. One commenter described, quote, sales data that does not add up, and a completely false estimated profit margin. Another commenter said that, quote, Dickey's barbecue business model involves selling stores as substantially more than quoted, with Dickey's getting a big portion of the cut. Dickey's will tell franchisees the cost will be $400,000, and it will cost sometimes double that, but you don't know until you are already heavily invested. Then, the owner would default on their SBA loan, and the next buyer comes in and pays half, but then they will default until the restaurant is sold for about 10% of the original cost of the business. Note how they said the owner will default on their SBA loan. We're going to come back to that, because private equity has figured out how to make the government backstop this fraud. And now, when these franchisees are bankrupted and penniless because the business they were promised was all a lie, the government actually pays the bad loan, and the private equity firm walks away from it.
Wow.
Some of these private equity firms are actually setting up webs of shell companies and doing what's called the Texas two-step to hide their assets and tax up their LLCs while bankrupting out of their failed business before anyone they stole from has a chance to sue for damages. We'll get back to that in a minute because it's super messed up. But anyways, in Lena Khan's report, she listed the top 12 complaints along with what franchises were most frequently mentioned in that type of complaint. And Michael Browning Jr. finally got that sweet, sweet recognition that he always brings. His company, Unleashed Brands, was top of the industry in misrepresentation and deception, actual and threat retaliation. Tiffany's story is just one of many. Franchise disclosure document issues, which is a nice way to say fraud, and private equity takeovers. But it's worth noting that almost all of these top complaints from business owners are all separate elements of the same fraudulent scheme where you lie to get people to buy into your
Dangerous to make
then
them.
you trap them in predatory contracts that change over time to be more exploitative. If they speak out, you're retaliating against them with lawfare. You can take their businesses, bankrupt them in court, or just charge them the $200,000 fee that they owe you when you fired them. Because you recently amended the contract they signed years ago to add this little tidbit in. They tried to speak out against it, but obviously, the contract is contract, right? Like, I really cannot convey how insane this stuff is. It sounds impossible, It sounds like someone would stop them, like there would be any amount of debt. Like, you can't just pretend to have a business and sell millions of dollars of fake franchise liquor joints and then launder the money out into a chain of LLCs and say, oopsies, money's gone, guess there's nothing we can do. But that is literally happening in broad daylight, right in front of the courts and the regulators. The comments that the FTC received were cries for help. Here are just a few that specifically highlighted Unleashed Brands. Quote, franchisees were forced to use a construction manager named Foxkin that was stealing money. Foxkin set up a shell corporation for a bogus procurement company that franchisees were required to use. The owner, Chuck Gaza, was placed in charge of the procurement. The sole purpose was to create an additional markup on items. Markups were in excess of 80% on some items and sold tens of thousands of dollars to each franchisee. Unleashed Brands has ruined my family's life. I am a franchisee of Premier Martial Arts that has lost everything I own in under 2 years. They lied to us countless times during the due diligence and sales process. Miles Baker, vice president of Premier Martial Arts, told us to suck it up and get over it when my husband and I confronted him with all the lies he told us. Unleashed Brands and PMA have treated franchisees not only inhumanely, and might as well be called quote, it is traumatizing to be told they are trying to bankrupt anyone with your family name, all while they continue to siphon money from markets. Unleashed Brands are monsters, and the franchise industry should be disgusted by the example they set. The stories about Unleashed Brands piled and got pretty specific. One franchisee even claimed that Stephen Polizzola, the lead lawyer for Unleashed Brands, said to them, quote, we are going to crush you into submission, just like we are doing with Premier Martial Arts and the Little Kid. It is sickening to see how people are being treated after we use our life savings to start a business. And they are using their life savings as well as their fixed credit over and over again. So many franchisees have the same story. They are lied to in the process of buying into the business. And not just little lies, older, felony level lies. Many of which are
That's called
the
advertising.
very documents themselves if any regulator cared to investigate. Then, as soon as you sign on the line, they own you, and little by little, the fees are added on, the kickbacks pile up, and the fraud and extortion slowly bury you into bankruptcy. If you try to get out, they can sue you, or charge you tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in exit fees, which are often written in from the start or added on to your contract. But even more, private equity has latched on to a new strategy. They tell franchisees to use special SBA and ROBS loans. A ROBS loan, short for rollover as business start, although in this case the abbreviation ROBS conveys way more clearly what they're actually doing. They are a way for you to pledge your retirement account as collateral to fund your business. And so now, the private equity firm not only gets these people trapped in contractual servitude and no proof of credit they can acquire, but it also gets all their liquid assets, but then it also gets their retirement account on an empty promise that you're going to have a brand new business. Just trust us. Sign on the line. If that wasn't bad enough, they make sure that whenever possible, their victims are using SBA loans, which are special loans for starting small businesses, which are backed by the government. I presume that the initial idea here was to encourage banks to lend to people that are starting small businesses so it could spur the economy. But what it has become is a way for private equity to extort the system and steal from our tax dollars to the tune of Lord knows how much each year. Because an SBA loan, if you go bankrupt and can't pay it back, as so many of these aspiring franchisees cannot, it's backed up to 85% by the federal government. And so what winds up happening is, based on these false promises and often fraudulent documents, predatory private equity groups can convince regular people to take out massive loans that they would never qualify for if they weren't joining an apparently reputable franchise. And when it turns out that the business model isn't what they were told, they're bankrupted. Their franchises close down, private equity walks away rich, and the taxpayer dollar covers the bill to the bank. In this way, private equity is using average Americans as willing suckers, as go-betweens, who get tricked into extracting every ounce of cash, savings, and future credit that their whole life represents. And private equity can run this whole scheme never having taken on any risk at all, except risk of going to prison if any regulator or law enforcement agency would ever wake up and do their jobs, which so far has not exactly happened. And so, the show goes on. This happened to basically every owner of a premier martial arts franchise. They all tried to sue Michael Browning Jr., and he crushed most of them with lawfare and arbitration, and regular court as well. This happened to dozens and dozens of little gyms, but this also happens with other private equity, like Burger Inn, like Dickey's Barbecue Pit, like Dagwoods, and Subway, and I Heart Mac and Cheese. It's also happening with mental health care clinics, and the list goes on and on. And it's going on right now for thousands of franchisees around the country. I Heart Mac and Cheese is in arbitration right now, and the lawyer representing all of these regular Americans is fighting with everything she's got. If you want to know more about how corrupt the franchising industry has become and just how this fraud works, FranchiseRealityCheck.com is a website started by Genevieve Prado, who was the first franchisee to buy into the I Heart Mac and Cheese brand, based on false promises and fraud, exactly as we've described. She's now been in litigation for 7 years against the company, and she lays everything out on that website in detail with explanations and evidence, and it's a whole true crime rabbit hole if you want to check it out. I Heart Mac and Cheese is particularly dark because the owners are in the process of doing what is called the Texas Two-Step, where you open a new legal entity, in this case called Pilar Coffee Bar, and then you transfer all of your assets to it, but none of your debt or liabilities. And when you're bankrupted because, I don't know, you're running an entirely fraudulent business model that was designed to defraud your franchisees, then there's nothing in the bank account when they finally make it through a decade-long legal battle to seek some form of compensation, because you've transferred it away. You get away with the fraud, and you walk away rich. They get taken for all their cash, life savings, and landed with a lifetime of debt to boot. It sounds unbelievable, even impossible. But as we've learned over the last couple of weeks, the system is designed to protect the big boys and to exploit all of us. At virtually any franchise owned by private equity, you can expect some version of this playbook, because franchising is supposed to be a long game, a business built over decades and generations, like McDonald's originally was. But private equity lives on annual growth and 2-year cycles, extracting as much cash as possible, as quickly as possible, with little or no thought of the damage or consequences left in its wake. And so now, we've covered 3 different versions of the same story, essentially, in 3 different class segments of society. It's happening to the middle class, it's happening to those at the bottom, and it's happening to anyone who falls through the cracks into prison. But I'm sure there are thousands of you out there that work in other fields that have other similar stories to this, because various versions of these stories are becoming more and more common every year. This is the natural progression of the system that they've built up around us, where the ultra-wealthy write the rules, and the ultra-wealthy have a secret court system that works for them, and the ultra-wealthy control the politics through donations and powerful leverage. And with every new advancement in technology and AI, with every new economic emergency and corporate bailout, every new war and omnibus spending bill, we are all being marched deeper and deeper into indentured servitude. The 2 primary levers of power that control the world are money and the law. We are all trapped under an ever-increasing inflationary vice, while our tax dollars pay for their kickbacks, their bailouts, and their wars.
Yep.
And if any of us slip through the cracks or into their secret courts, they've got a prison labor system ready to catch you at the bottom and put you to work. This is their vision of the future, where you will be a good little worker bee slaving away at the lower caste of society while they sit like juleps in their McMansions, where there's one tier of justice for the rich and another tier of justice for us, where they write the rules and we are the ones bound by them. And the whole system relies on us staying distracted, on us not knowing how the law works or how arbitration works. These stories are too complex, too boring for us to pay attention to when the TV is filled with flashy pop stars and big booty hoes. Just go to the movies, turn off your brain, and enjoy some good old-fashioned entertainment. Nothing to see here. But not you guys. Y'all are something special. I want to commend you on getting through another incredibly complex episode. I do my best to make these days meaningful and entertaining, even when it's a subject that is inherently so complex and boring that most people will probably never learn. So, thanks for sticking through to that.
I'm thinking an open tab missing that.
Or will at least think differently the next time you see a semi-truck on the road, because I know that personally, I could never look at trucking the same way again since I learned all this crazy shit. And to me, that's the beauty of learning. not only do we grow smarter, but hopefully also more compassionate.